Happy Nowruz, everyone. Nowruzatan Mubarak و Behruz. To begin, please join me to thank Behnush, Behnam Nia, Nagme Farahmand, and Marzieh Rahimzadeh for their inspiring musical performance. I am Mohammad Tawakkoli, the inaugural director of the Elahé Omidyar Mir-Djalali Institute of Iranian Studies at the University of Toronto. I welcome you all to today's special Nowruz 2023 panel discussion, Reflections on the Women Life Liberty Movement by Canadian and European Parliamentarians, Ali Ehsassi, Azadeh Rojhan, and Danial Ilkhanipour. I welcome the distinguished member of the panel to the University of Toronto. Today's special Nowruz Meet and Greet Did o Bazdid is jointly organized with the Office of Ali Ehsassi. I'm grateful to MP Ali Ehsassi for his invaluable support and exemplary dedication. I am also grateful to Tirgan for providing the condition for the visit of our special guests here today. Furthermore, we are thankful to Roshan Cultural Heritage Institute for fully funding the establishment of the Elahé Omidyar Mir-Djalali Institute of Iranian Studies at the University of Toronto. At the outset, I also like to express our collective gratitude to Canada's Indigenous people and acknowledge this land on which the Elahé Omidyar Mir-Djalali Institute of Iranian Studies operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of Credit River. Today, this meeting place continues to be the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to live, learn, and to teach on their ancestral homeland. Inaugurating the spring season, Nowruz embodies the universal message of natural renewal, rejuvenation, and the promise of lighter and brighter days ahead. With the natural certainty of sprouting, blooming, budding vegetations, flowers, trees, singing birds, and the scent of spring, Nowruz 2023 is also the harbinger of a new and democratic Iran. The atrocities of the Islamic Republic and its theocratic and authoritarian government cannot extinguish the persuasive public desire for the empowerment of women, life, liberty, and the pursuit of public happiness. The September 16th death of Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian woman at the hands of the morality police in Tehran, brought into open public view a national-wide women's movement challenging the ethical and moral foundation of the Islamic Republic's patriarchal and theocratic regime. The escalating demonstrations since Mahsa's death were the daily plebiscites against Iran's repressive and misogynist political order. Unlike earlier movement, the popular women's resistance includes Iran's mega cities and tiny towns, all committed to the advancement of women life, liberty, zan, zindagi, azadi. The liberatory movement of Iranian women embodies a global moment of enthusiasm, signaling the resurgence of women as agents and senior partners in the new social movements and revolutions. Whereas the previous social and political movements were largely grounded on fraternity, brotherhood, and equality of men, the liberatory Iranian movement rejects the patriarchal order and violence and seeks to establish a post-Islamic Republic social, cultural, and political order that fully embodies women's choice and equality. I will now briefly introduce each distinguished speaker in the order of their appearance. Ali Ehsassi has served as the member of the Parliament from the Toronto riding of Willowdale since 2015. He is a member of the Liberal Caucus and currently serves as the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Parliament. Azadeh Rojhan has served as a member of the Swedish Parliament since 2014 and as a member of the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly. Danial Ilkhanipour has been a member of the Parliament, Hamburg State, since 2015 and a spokesman for Europe and International Affairs. He also represents Hamburg as a member of the Congress of Regions in Brussels. Please join me to welcome our panelists. Our first speaker is Mr. Ali Ehsassi. Mr. Ehsassi, you can speak there or maybe...
What is your preference?
Please come to the podium.
سلام دوستان، خیلی خوشحالم که همگی شما رو اینجا میبینم. اجازه بدین در ابتدا بگم سال نو یکایک شما مبارک. امیدوارم که سالی که در پیش داریم سالی تاریخی باشه و سالی که بالاخره بعد از 44 سال شاهد این باشیم که همه ایرانیان در هر کجای دنیا که تشریف دارن لبخند به چهرهشون باشه. میخواستم همینطور از هنرمندان عزیزی که لطف کردن امروز با ما هستن تشکر ویژه بکنم. اما فکر می‌کنم کسی که از همه بیشتر باید ازشون تشکر کرد برای برنامه امروز آقای دکتر توکلی طرقی هستن و ناگفته نمونه واقعا که نمیدونم 15 ساله 20 ساله شما واقعا سرمنشأ کلی از تمام اتفاقات خوب این شهر بودین. همیشه انرژی و پشن شما واقعا همگی ما رو حیرت انگیز کرده. ممنون برای تمامی فعالیت هایی که تمامی این سالها متقبل شده. و ناگفته نمونه که به گمان من I think we really have to thank the Tirgan Center. The Tirgan Center, thanks to their incredible work, have really made this Toronto the epicenter of the movement over the course of this weekend. And I would argue that they have done something that is absolutely unprecedented in our diaspora in the last 44 years. I'm sure many of you here had the good occasion to be at their event yesterday evening, and let me tell you, they really hit the ball out of the park. It was phenomenal to see that they had rolled up their sleeve and did something which by any measure should be considered unprecedented. And it's because of that that we have the great occasion to welcome to the University of Toronto two incredible colleagues who have been working very hard over the course of the past 6 months in terms of making sure that legislatures and parliamentarians around the world hear the message of Iranians within Iran. Now, for these opening remarks, I will keep it really short. But the reason why we're here, all of us, every single one of us, is the last 6 months have been very difficult. We obviously, over the course of the last 44 years, this has not come as news to us that the regime is atrocious and has no regard for the dignity or the interests of the Iranian people. We're used to that after 44 years. But what we have seen over the course of the past 6 months has truly broken every single one of our hearts. And we are at one of those historic moments, in my opinion, where things cannot remain the same. We're at that inflection point. And the reason why I think so is we have all experienced this over the course of the past 6 months. Every single Iranian, the goodwill and the bonhomie that we have seen amongst Iranians over the course of the past 6 months in the diaspora, again, has been unprecedented. And why do I say our diaspora is very, very important to what does ultimately shape the realities on the ground in Iran? It's because we are an incredible diaspora of 8 million people everywhere around the world. Every single person you see is essentially a product of the brain drain that has happened since the Iranian Revolution in 1979. It is a tremendous asset to see all the talented Iranians everywhere you look, whether it be in our country here in Canada, whether it be south of the border in the States, or whether it be in Europe. And imagine if 8 million people in the diaspora decide that they believe firmly that they can support the amazing and courageous people in Iran. That means we can make a difference, and we will shape that difference. It's time we all stood up, and we shared with the world what the realities are within Iran. This is a country that has had no regard or no respect for any of the norms and principles that the rest of the world, in large part, I should say, adheres to. And it's been 44 years. And I would argue that any country that has no regard for the most fundamental and basic rights of its own people is a menace to the international order. A country that stares down its own people, that does not allow them to enjoy very simple things, is a country that cannot be relied upon by the rest of the world. This is not any regime. And why do I say that? Yes, we do have, unfortunately, many authoritarian states around the world. But even by the measure of those authoritarian states, Iran is an exception. Let's look at developments in Russia, just by way of comparison. We did see amazing, courageous Russians make it on the streets and say they were against Mr. Putin's war in Ukraine. But not once did any single one of us, even though Mr. Putin is a dangerous authoritarian and he is terrible, but not once did we see one of those protesters manhandled in the public eye. But what we have seen in the last 6 months in Iran is goons, there's no other word for it, attacking innocent, courageous people on the streets. Last 6 months, that's why it's been so difficult for every single one of us. Because social media being what it is, we have seen those images of terrible, atrocious, disgusting members of the Iranian regime and the Sepah attacking people who are just there for their right to peaceful assembly. So that's one measure of the pain that we all have experienced. Another measure, I would say to you, yes, there are a lot of authoritarian states out there. But what other authoritarian state actually does what the Iranian regime has done to our cultural luminaries who have really stood up for basic freedoms and rights. Look at how they have been treated. They have been thrown in jail. They have been intimidated. They have been told that they can't say a single thing. I truly do not know of any other country that deals with its cultural personalities the way the Iranian regime does. Once again, let's look at how this regime actually treats that country's most prized and popular athletes. Nowhere else in the world will you see a Navida Afkari killed. Nowhere else will you see athletes, one after another, treated with the same disrespect that we have seen in Iran. But the reason I say all of this is every single one of us and the courageous and incredible people of Iran are on the right side of history. But it's important that we put aside all of our differences. It really is. This is no time for all of us to be pseudo-intellectuals and point out that this particular person, I don't know, their speech wasn't all that great, or that other person, does not have the right ideas. Every single one of us, irrespective of what principles we hold and what persuasion we are from, we've got to learn to work together. Enough of this pointing fingers at those differences. We're bound to have differences. We dream for a different kind of Iran, each and every single one of us. But that doesn't mean that every single one of us are not heartbroken by what that country has experienced for the past 44 years, or aren't heartbroken by what we have seen in the last 6 months. So let's learn to work together. Let's learn not to criticize each other. I can truly tell you, even within my own family, there are differences of opinion on every single issue under the sun, and that's good. I don't go and say, to anyone who's a member of my family, if you don't believe in the same things in the exact same things I believe in, then you're terrible and you're a traitor and you're no good. That's what maturity is. We each come at this with different dreams, different aspirations, and different principles. So let's learn to harness the human resources that is the Iranian diaspora. That's what it's all about. And believe me, we are all touched and heartbroken by what has happened in Iran. But if we summon the will to work together, to support those truly, truly courageous people in Iran, we will prevail. Have no doubt. Absolutely have no doubt. And the people of Iran, it's been 44 years where they have been denied dignity. They've been denied the most basic and the most fundamental of rights. And every single one of them, of course, they do have different priorities. There are different persuasions. But they have watched for 44 years as that country has fallen behind. They have experienced a government that has not cared about them and has not cared about the national interest of Iran for 44 years. So each one of us really do have the moral obligation to do everything we can to make sure that their message gets out to the world. And I'll leave you with this. We have received polls from Iran. And yes, we can quibble as to how precise some of those polls are. The latest poll suggests that 80% of Iranians have had it with the Islamic Republic. They've absolutely had it. You are all evidence of that because you voted with your feet. But imagine the people who remain in Iran, 80% are fed up and they have had it. So you want to quibble? Let's say it's 70%. So I would ask you, do you know of any country in the world where the regime of 30% of the population can hold on when 70% of people are fed up? And this isn't only about ideological differences. This is about economics. It's about resource management. It's about the lack of accountability, whether it be political or economic. So stand firm. We should all stand firm. We should all echo the beautiful and lofty aspirations of Iranians. They want what the rest of the world has been experiencing for the last 44 years. You know why the constitutional revolution happened at the start of the 20th century in Iran. That was, it all occurred at a point where Iranians came to realize full well that Iran was falling behind and that other countries were progressing. And Iranians just said, you know what? Essentially, we got to keep up with the Joneses. So this is no different. And believe me, it might take some time, but Iranians within Iran will be on the right side of history, and they will be free because they have every right to be free and enjoy all those fundamental things that each of us cherish and care about. Thank you.
Thank you so much. First of all, نوروز همگی پیروز با آرزوی سالی پر از شادی و آزادی و سلامت برای همه باشه. I would like to thanks for this opportunity, for making this event, to both of you for having us here. It's a great honor, and I hope that we will have the opportunity to arrange these kind of discussions in the future in a free round when we discuss about the developments in the country and how we can all contribute to that. So thank you very much for having us, indeed. Well, I would like to start with saying that this is the beginning of the end. What we are seeing happening in Iran today is the beginning of the end. And there is several reasons to that. The Iranian regime has lost its legitimacy. I can't say this word. It's such a hard English word. I'm Swedish. We don't say some. We say it, pronounce it in different ways. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean. In many ways. I mean, when it comes to the Iranian people's view about the regime, you heard about the polls. We know how much they have suffered for the past over 40 years. But for the first time in history, the world outside Iran has seen the true face of Iran. They knew about it, but they didn't know how bad it actually is. But now they know. And for the first, I mean, if someone would tell me 1 year ago that the outside world would change its Iran policy this rapidly as it has, because we need to acknowledge that there has been some changes when it comes to the policy towards Iran. And I will get back to that, why we have to acknowledge that. If someone would tell me that these changes would be done in just a few months, I wouldn't believe them. Because the outside world, the Western world, have been so firm when it comes to their Iran policy. They have been focused on the nuclear weapon issue, and that is the only thing that they have been concentrated on. They haven't spoken about anything else. And Iran has kidnapped the Western world with this issue. Whenever they want to talk anything else, they say, okay, but then we don't need to stick to this nuclear deal. And the West has backed down because the West has been concerned about its security and what it means if Iran gets nuclear weapons. But now we have seen that West, European countries, US and others are starting to think about how would the world look like without the Iranian regime. And why I think that it's important for all of us to acknowledge that and say that we are seeing changes is that if we don't do that, if we don't celebrate when we take small steps, then we are actually playing the Iranian regime we are playing their game, because the Iranian regime wants to say that no, nothing has changed. We are standing firm. Our relationship with the West is the same as before. So we have to acknowledge that no, there are some changes being done, and the Iran policy has changed a lot. But that doesn't mean that there needs to be many more changes, many more steps must be taken. And we have to make the democratic countries in the West to stand up for the values that they want for their own people, also for the Iranian people. But as I also said yesterday at the seminar that Tirgan arranged, I also understand why the Western countries hesitate and why they don't know how to proceed when it comes to Iranian policy. Because they need to have some answers to some questions that they have, because they have to care about their own security, they have to care about their own people, they have to care about their own situation. And that is not strange. As a politician from Sweden, I of course must concern about the situation for the Swedish people and the security of Sweden. I have to do that first, because if I don't do that, then the people of Sweden won't even elect me. They don't put a trust in me, and then I won't have the possibility to make any changes in any issues. So and of course also something that I usually say, because I think it's something that makes us think, is that if the countries, the democratic countries, doesn't think about their own people, if they don't think about their own situation, then they will become like the Islamic Republic of Iran, because that is exactly what the Islamic Republic of Iran does. It doesn't care about its own people. It's only thinking about the situation for the leaders, for the top, what they think is best for them. So we shouldn't keep it against the Western people. We shouldn't, sorry? Hold it against, thank you, hold it against the Western governments if they are looking for their own situation. We have to say, we understand you, but how is your interest connected with the situation in Iran, and how can we show them that it actually is? So we need to answer those questions. And when I say we, well, everyone here, but also the ones who wants to continue leading this process needs to do that. And I don't think that we have reached that yet. We don't have the answers to those questions, and we haven't even tried to answer those questions, because we are still stuck in saying that, oh, they don't care about us, they don't care about what's happening in Iran. No, maybe they are not, because we have a war in Ukraine. Actually, all European countries are very concentrated on that, because the war in Ukraine affects us all, and it's very, very difficult, and for Sweden, is a critical situation when it comes to security, because it's just next door. And also the effect that it had on the economy in Europe, but also in US, and as I understand, it's also starting to affect you in Canada. But the issue of Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, is actually linked to the government in Iran, because Iran is operating for Putin in Ukraine. So we have to show these links, we have to mention these links, and be more clear in that. So that is what I try to do as a politician in Sweden. I've been working with the Iranian issue since the Green Movement, actually, being very active. And I mean, one of the biggest struggles have always been to say to my own government, to the Swedish policymakers, to the Europeans, for the European Parliament, that what the Iranian policies, the idea of reforms, it's outdated. We can't continue on this path, because as you see, nothing happens. And every time we think that we have taken a step forward, we actually just have taken several steps backwards. So we need to change our Iran policy. And it's not until 6 months ago that they realized, oh, that's true, we need to do something else. But they don't have the answer to what is that else, the other thing that we need to do. So that is where we are standing now. So I'm encouraging and urging all leaders, I don't only say leaders here in outside Iran, leaders inside Iran, we have to help them and be their voices also to actually be able to answer these questions. And I'm a politician outside Iran. I'm a politician for the Swedish people, actually, for the European people. I just try to use my platform to also be a voice. But I can't never advocate for what should be done or not to be done for what is happening in Iran, because I haven't lived there since I was 5 years old. I have never been back. And it's not even my right to have an idea about that, because I haven't suffered as the people in Iran. All I can do is to try to help and be an advocate for their voice towards the outside world. But, so the true leaders, in my opinion, are those who are in jail in Iran. We need to get them out of the jail, and we need to focus on that human rights issue and telling the outside world that if there is anything you can do for Iran is to advocate that all political prisoners should be released. And by doing that, you are taking a first step in making Iran free from this horrible regime, because then they can be the true leaders of their people, and then we will see a free Iran. So I try to concentrate on the human rights issues and not so much about the political and how the Iran should look like in the future. I try to focus on the human rights issues, because that is values that all democratic people can agree on, and I think that is what I should do, not have a political idea about the developments in Iran and how Iran should look like in some years, hopefully. But I began with saying this is the end of this is the beginning of the end, but how the end would be and how soon it will come, that is up to us. But it's also about how firm we stand behind the Iranian people. And we can do that in many ways. Now maybe we don't need the protest. Now we need to start answering questions so that we can take the next step. And we have to help them to find the answers to those questions, not giving them the answers to the questions. So hopefully, I see you for Nowruz in Iran. Can we hope for that? I think so. Yeah, we should hope for that. سال دیگه در ایران، ایرانی آزاد. And I just need to say, I hope all seminars starts like this. It was so wonderful. It just sets the tone for everything. So thank you to the musicians also. Thank you so much.
Outstanding, Azadeh Rojhan. And next, Danial Ilkhanipour, please.
نوروزتون پیروز، سال خوبی باشه واسه تک تکتون. آرزوی سلامتی و خوشبختی دارم، هم واسه ایران آزاد که مطمئنم که به زودی میرسیم. Thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to be here. It's big motivation to speak with all the other allies who are